Hi, I'm Danica Fine. Glad to see you came along for this first hands-on Schema Registry exercise. In it, you'll set up the environment that you'll need in order to complete the rest of the hands-on exercises in this course. You'll need to log in to Confluent Cloud. So if you don't already have an account, before continuing, pause the video and go back to take a look at the sign-up steps contained at the end of the previous module. I'll be right here when you're ready. Now that you have your Confluent Cloud account, the first step you'll complete in this exercise is to clone the Learn Kafka course's GitHub repository. It includes the Schema Registry subproject that you'll use during this and following exercises in this course. Next, you'll create a new Kafka cluster in Confluent Cloud that you'll use with the course exercises. After creating the Schema Registry 101 cluster, you'll enable Schema Registry for your Confluent Cloud environment. And note that Schema Registry only needs to be enabled once for any Confluent Cloud environment. So this step may not be required if Schema Registry was already previously enabled for the environment you'll be using. Now that Schema Registry has been enabled for your environment, you can define the Java client configuration settings that will be used during the course exercises. And the last step of this exercise is to create the local Java client properties file within the Schema Registry project. When you're finished, join me in the next module.